As summer draws near, we enter the scariest time of the year for Japan. This is the time when people tell the most horrific stories they can think of to add a chill to your day and a greater chill to your night. Here we begin to delve into the darkest, most ritualistic stories that Japan has to offer. Tonight we enter the world of ritual pastas and stories connected to different tries at exploration and urban horror stories that go horribly wrong. People try rituals that are not exactly to be left to the innocent. They are cursed. They are gone missing. They have disappeared. What has happened to these souls? Find out in the stories I read to you tonight on
Osoroshii Saturday.
Our first story tonight is called Gestalt Breakdown. This doesn't have anything to do with monsters or ghosts or anything like that, so don't worry. Just look at your reflection in the mirror. Look straight into your eyes and ask, who are you? You probably feel pretty weird, huh? Maybe even a sense of unease. Well, during World War II, the Nazis conducted a lot of experiments on Jewish people. One of them involved test subjects standing in front of mirrors, sometimes several times a day, and talking to themselves. They might be told to ask their reflection, who are you? Or something similar. And in any mental changes during the experiments would be documented. This experiment was one of the many ways to try and control somebody's personality. About 10 days after the experiment started, the researchers began noticing abnormalities. The subjects began losing the ability to make logical judgments. They often had trouble telling what was real and what wasn't. By the 10th month mark, the subjects' egos were completely obliterated. Rather than questioning who was in the mirror, they began to question who they were, and eventually they went insane. I read about that on the military boards a while back, here on Nichan. At the time, my friend and I thought it sounded really interesting, and we also agreed we thought it was bullshit. So we tried it on ourselves. That day, I stood in front of the mirror at my house and asked my reflection, who are you? This was late at night in my bedroom, which made it feel really eerie. But I was so excited to try out a Nazi experiment that I wasn't scared at all. But for some reason, I got sick and threw up that day. No, my face isn't that bad, haha. I realized that maybe going through with this experiment might be a really bad idea, so I gave it up after that. The next day I told my friend I had been too scared to finish it. He immediately started teasing me for being a scaredy cat. He laughed a while longer, but after that conversation we didn't really talk about the experiment. Around the time I started to forget we had even read the story, my friend started to miss school more and more, when he finally just didn't show up. I asked him what was wrong, but all he would say is, it's nothing. Like he wasn't even paying attention to me. A few days later, I got a call from him in the middle of the night. As soon as I picked up the phone and put it to my ear, I could hear that he was in a bad place. Hey, I am me, right? My name is Akira, right? Isn't it? His voice was wavering, and I think he might have been crying. Right? Tell me I'm right. What the hell are you talking about? I asked, annoyed. Of course you're Akira. Oh yeah, you're right. He breathed a ragged sigh and continued talking. You remember the mirror thing? Well, I kept doing it after you said you weren't going to do it anymore, and I've done it a lot actually. I'm not a narcissist or anything, but looking at and talking with myself in the mirror made me feel good. I'll talk to myself and somehow I feel less like me, and that feels good. Whoa, hold on a second, that doesn't sound safe, I said. I tried to convince him to stop, but he refused to listen. Hey, don't worry about it, I'll be fine, it's alright, I'll be fine, it's alright. No, I'm fine. He kept repeating virtually the same thing like a broken record. Hey, I yelled. And he immediately hung up the phone. I was worried, so I called him back, but nobody picked up the phone. I kept pushing redial, hoping he would answer. Finally, on my 12th try, I heard the phone pick up. "Who are you?" my friend asked before the call disconnected. I tried calling again, but no matter how many times I tried, I couldn't get through. I hoped to see him at school the next day, but he never came. Sometime later, his parents got worried because they hadn't earned anything from him for a while. They went to where he was staying, but he had completely gone insane. He couldn't even recognize his own parents. He stared at them blankly and with a smile on his face, returned to the mirror to talk with his reflection some more. His parents brought him home and had him committed to a hospital near where they live. I don't know the exact details, but through the grapevine, I've heard that he's doing a lot better. But he has no mirrors or any reflective metal or anything in his hospital room. I didn't think you could go crazy in such a short period of time. Regarding the original experiments, they continued to go on for some time. Some subjects were forced to stand between facing mirrors rather than in front of a single mirror. Somehow the facing mirrors induced psychosis much more quickly. In case you were wondering, the mirror my friend used was a 3-sided mirror. If you have a full-length mirror, please try this experiment. Look straight into your reflection's eyes and ask, "Who are you?" You probably feel pretty weird, and maybe you have a sense of unease, right? If you are someone who is easily swayed, you may be more likely to feel the effects and go crazy, so don't continue with the experiment. Recently, when I've washed my face, I've been surprised to find I'm staring into someone else's eyes. If I look long and hard, I can see myself. I am I, aren't I? This story's called A Call from a Friend. This happened when Saito was studying at a prep school. At the time, he was staying in the school dorms. Summer was coming to an end, and the students had just completed an important mock exam. In celebration, a group decided to go to an abandoned building up on a mountain behind the school. There were rumors that high school students committed suicide up there, and when the group arrived at the house, they saw that it was apparently quite a popular destination, as the place was a mess and didn't feel creepy at all. "We came all the way here and nothing happened," one of the students complained. But only after that, they were sure nothing out of the ordinary was going on. The four decided to head up back to the dorms, where they then went to Saito's room to hang out. As they were sitting there in the room, Araki's phone began to ring. "I'm sorry that I wasn't at home when you came all the way to play with me. I'm heading over there now." Araki got scared, relayed what the voice on the other end of the phone had said, and then immediately ran out of the room. Nakayama and Yasuda began to run away as well, and Saito called after them. He started running down the hallway when his phone suddenly began to ring. "I'm not letting you run away, Saito." The voice filled his ears with fear. It had so much rage that it felt like it weighed him down. Saito did everything he could to hide from whatever had called him, including changing his cell phone number almost immediately. However, his studies suffered for quite some time after the events took place that day. The test date grew closer and closer, and once he was able to get back on track, he completely forgot about the phone call. When spring came around, he was elated to find out he had passed the entrance exam for university. He moved into an apartment of his own, set everything up, including a landline, telephone, and an answering machine. One day, he went out and was surprised to see a red light blinking on the machine when he returned. He pushed to receive the message. "It might be a while, but I think I can still make it to your place, Saito." Dangerous reading group. A bit of a warning before we start. This story may be cursed. So if that's the kind of thing that worries you, maybe stop before you start. This story takes place during my second year of middle school. It happened during summer vacation. I was at my friend Asuka's house to stay the night, and our friend Shizuko and Chinatsu also came over. Even though we wanted to have fun, we planned on studying and working together over summer homework together. Spending the whole night studying would be boring, so I brought along books of scary stories by Inagawa Junji, very famous scary manga book writer. I originally bought one of the books so I could write my impressions about it. but I never actually got around to reading it. When we all arrived at Asuka's house, we got right to work. When we didn't understand something, we were able to come up with ideas together to get a few of the problems. After a few hours, we grew tired of studying and decided to call it quits for the day. I immediately took out my book from my bag. Chinatsu, who knew nothing about me bringing scary books, thought about bringing a few things into the room to make everything more scary. 5 candles, a lighter, a piece of white paper, and white powder, probably salt. These things are often used for all sorts of scary rituals in Japan. I looked online and found some stuff about warding off evil spirits when telling scary stories, she's explained. "This is kind of creepy, you guys," Shizuko said, pulling up to her knees and sitting there with him next to her chest. "Do we really have to do this?" "We're all here together," Asuka said. "We'll be fine." Shizuko reluctantly nodded her head and agreed to play along with Chinatsu. She quickly helped set up the ritual. She set a candle in each corner, drew a tori gate in red ink in the center of the piece of the paper, and then made a mound of salt on the paper before standing the final candle in the mound. She then lit all of the candles and turned the lights off before sitting across from me. I took the book into my hand and started from the very first story, reading slowly and deliberately out loud. We were all really into it at first, but around the 4th story we started teasing each other by saying things like, "Oh, I know this story." When that got boring, Chinatsu started telling a story she read online. It ended with a passerby saying something to the narrator, and Chinatsu played along. That's when I saw somebody coming towards me. As soon as we passed each other, he screamed, "I'll curse you!" She made her voice scratchy and hard when she delivered the last line. At that very moment, the candle behind us blew out. 3 of us screamed all at once. Before I noticed what had happened, Asuka had thrown herself at me. Chinatsu held on to us tightly. Shizuko?" Asuka asked, barely above a whisper. She was dead silent, her back still facing the candle that went out. She gazed into the flame that still flickered from the candles that were lit. "Shizuko?" Shizuko finally raised her face, very slowly. When her eyes met mine, what sounded like scratching and pounding sounded from the door from the wall behind her. 3 of us screamed again, and Asuka's parents came barging into the bedroom. The tension in the room was enough for all of them to call the rest of our parents and tell them the sleepover was over. For a long time, my parents refused to let me go out. I was allowed to talk to my friends on the phone, but nothing else. Whenever I thought of Shizuko, I would try to call her, but I was never able to get a hold of her. Asuka and Chinatsu said they tried to call her as well, but neither had spoken to her since the sleepover and the incident. My parents finally started letting me go outside again. Summer vacation ended and school entrance ceremony was held. I looked everywhere for Shizuko, but she wasn't at school. Once school was let out, Asuka, Chinatsu, and I all went to Shizuko's house. But no matter how many times we rang the doorbell, nobody answered. We finally gave up and decided to go home when Chinatsu let out a surprised gasp. We turned around and saw her pointing at a window on the 2nd story. But all we saw was a white curtain. That's strange. It didn't take long for our homeroom teacher to make an announcement. Shizuko had transferred to another school. We asked our teachers and our parents, but nobody knew what to tell us. No one even knew where her nearest school was. Where did she go? When I reflect on what happened, I realize just how scary a child's curiosity can be. And now that I've finally written all this out, I realize something I hadn't before. The tori that we drew on the piece of paper was facing Shizuko. I wonder if it wasn't a door of some sort. A tori gate is a traditional Japanese gate most commonly found in Shinto shrines. It symbolically marks the transition from the profane to the sacred. The presence of the tori is an entrance that usually is the simplest way to identify Shinto shrines, but also seen as a bridge that gaps the ethereal world to the physical. It can let in and let out ghosts, spirits, yokai, onryo, and obake, as well as demons as well. They are sometimes a common sight at Buddhist temples too, where they stand at the entrance of the temple's shrine called a chinshusha. And they are usually a lot smaller though at the Buddhist temples. Their first appearance in Japan can be reliably pinpointed to the Heian period, where they are mentioned in a text in 922, so a very long time ago. They have been used since then to protect the spirit world from coming into the physical. Well guys, I hope you enjoyed those few stories we had here tonight. Until next time, I am Unrested. If you like what you saw here, please like, share, comment, or write to me about your own favorite Osoroshii Saturday story. Until next time, this was
Osoroshii Saturday.